I'm Charlotte Bright of Gold Derby, and as part of our Meet the Experts panel for TV documentaries, we're speaking with Aly Raisman from the TV documentary Darkness to Light on Lifetime, Donny Jackson of Dear on Apple TV, John Hoffman and Janet Tobias of Fauci on Disney Plus, and Julia Willoughby Nason and Jenna Furst from LuLaRich on Prime Video. The first question I want to ask, and I want to ask this to John first, is what were the documentary films or programs that made you say, that's what I want to do? I want to do that.
Oh man, as the oldest person on this panel, I'm sure, let's go way, way back. You know, it's hard for me to think about what in the early 1980s was a source of inspiration for me to become a documentarian. First film that I made in college, and decided, it was in the last month of school, I said, this is what I'm gonna do with the rest of my life. And then so I just came to New York with that film and, you know, hustled my way into some paying jobs.
And what about you, Janet?
Hoop Dreams. I grew up in Indiana and I saw Hoop Dreams and magic, like the intimacy, the getting to know people, the story, the caring at the end desperately about them.
And what about Julia? How about you?
I'd say Pull My Daisy, even though it's not a classic doc, it's kind of an voyeuristic verite doc to me.
And Jenner?
Yeah, it was Salesman. You know, when I saw what the Maisels had done with that and really all of their work early as a filmmaker in my teens, I said that this is really, it's amazing. It's as powerful as a scripted film.
Donny?
It was Errol Morris's Thin Blue Line. It was realizing how dramatic you can make a documentary, you know, in the same way that you can make a scripted film dramatic.
And Aly, I know you're not a filmmaker, but what were there any documentaries that you've seen that have had a big impact on you in your life?
I think, to be honest, there's many things that I've watched in my life, I think, that have had an impact, but I think what inspired, you know, working on the show was actually just like my everyday interactions with survivors, of just meeting so many people from all over the world. And honestly, this sounds so negative, but I guess I feel like hopefully the show reminded people that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. But I just really saw like how many people are struggling and how many people can relate to my experience. So I think that has had the biggest impact on me, that had inspired me to do the film. I know it's a very different answer than other people, but I mean, there's a lot of amazing documentaries out there, but I think just I'm inspired by people sharing their stories and speaking their truth.
And this next question, I want to loosen this up a little, because I think documentaries often get a rap of being immensely depressing, and a lot of them are. But I think there's also there's so many great documentaries that you can watch, and you feel just really good watching them, and they just make you feel good whenever you watch it. And I'm wondering, for any of you, what is that documentary that makes you feel that way? And I want to start with you, Donny.
Wow, Tiger King is crazy, you know, but it's still telling the story, you know. It's still giving you an amazing glimpse at humanity, you know, at its extremes, and to be able to do that and still not you know, go off the rails where you stop taking it seriously as a document of human behavior is pretty miraculous.
What about you, John?
You know, what popped into my head was The Eyes of Tammy Faye. And, you know, it just was such a immersion into a world that I found so intriguing when I would flip by it on, whatever UHF channels that they were on when I was young. But I thought that Fenton and Randy did an amazing job sort of elevating Tammy Faye in everyone's eyes and bringing out, the profound humanity that she had and the love for people. And they just really, undid so many, assumptions that the viewers had about her. It was, just an explosion in terms of the way that they made the film.
How about you, Janet?
I think there are a bunch, but just I'll name one that's sort of recent that just makes you feel good about a young girl, Eagle Huntress, which was the story of a young girl who was the first girl to hunt with an eagle in Mongolia and win the prize in the competition. And it just, you look at her, the love of her father teaching her and her doing it and her pride, and it just makes you feel great about family and girls and life.
And what about you, Jenner?
Honestly, one of the greatest sources of comfort viewing for me is David Attenborough. And I think to overlook that as part of our documentary culture is to miss something. I mean, the fact that I can completely take a break from human beings and go on a spellbinding journey through one of the most beautiful cinematic experiences that you could ever imagine, and all of it is real. And I can listen to David Attenborough with all of his quirks. It's honestly one of the joys of my life.
And Julia?
I love David Attenborough too, but I would say Paris is Burning because it shows it just shows like the resilience of being creative and how that can basically save someone's life in a lot of ways, even though in that film there were people that unfortunately lost their lives. It shows how precious life is in general. And I love seeing the place I grew up in at the time I grew up in it, in New York.
And what about you, Aly?
I'm going to agree. I would say the David Attenborough is definitely, I love watching those documentaries. I think that it's just incredible. I love watching them. It's so beautiful and so amazing. And then I also really enjoyed, there was that I remember a Jane Goodall episode of Dear Ex, and that was really incredible because I think that it really did a great job of keeping it positive, but also a call to action of like, we all need to be aware of what's going on in the planet. And I think that David Attenborough does a really incredible job of that, of showing the beauty of the planet and the animals, but also, a really important call to action that, we all need to wake up and take care of our planet and appreciate it and not take it for granted.
And wrapping this up, I think, you learn so much when you're making art about things that have actually happened. And I'm curious as to what's the best lesson you learned in life through your experience in making nonfiction? And I want to start with you, Janet.
Someone once said, and I think it continues, is that being a great director or producer is about being a human being that listens and is kind. And even when you are doing investigative work, I think that is true.
John?
Well, none of our work would exist if we didn't have trust, if we weren't able to instill trust in the subjects. And so to repeatedly enter into these trust relationships as we're making the films is such a challenge to who we are as people. And so if we are not honest, if we are not, true, then people are not going to trust us. So we have to be really examining ourselves over and over and over again as we enter into every single one of the relationships that we have with anybody we're putting on camera, whether they are at the center of the film or, secondary. It's a constant analysis that we have to go through of ourselves. And so, really exploring trust is a fascinating thing to do over and over again.
And Aly?
I think I learned a lot from the experience. It was my first time ever doing a project like this, and I felt such a sense of responsibility because so many survivors were sharing their stories for the first time and the first time publicly. And so I think it's a important reminder, something that I had to keep reminding myself, and something we talked about a lot on set and leading up to the set, and actually even after, was that everyone, that no matter how strong they may look when they're on camera, these are real people who are really struggling and having ups and downs, and we might meet them on a day where they're having a really hard time, and just kind of remembering to meet people where they're at, I think, is really important. And it's such a it's hard when you're trying to tell someone's real story because they've experienced so much trauma, and I just think it's really important to be really sensitive to that. And I've been on sets before where it's so like really, really long days, like 10-12 hours on set, but this was a really different, it was still long days, but we really made sure to keep saying, if you need water, you can get up, you can go call someone, you can go see a therapist. We tried to make it a lot more of a sensitive environment. And I think that's really how it should be. And I'm hoping, whether or not you're talking about trauma, like that's just the environment that's at workplaces. It should be, we should create spaces where, people don't have to explain themselves, that they're having a really tough time or they're going through something really hard. So I just learned that everyone's battling something. And even if they seem really strong on camera and they're not emotional, it's still important to check in and make sure that they're doing okay, make sure they have a support system. And, sometimes when we're filming, oftentimes we go home and sometimes you're traveling, you're in a hotel room by yourself. And so I think it's important to remember that even if they seem like they're having a good day, we still have to check on them and make sure that they're doing all right and they feel okay after they're like letting everything sit in. It's a lot. So I feel very grateful for everyone that poured their heart out into the project. It was a lot, and we asked a lot of the survivors, and they blew me away. And so I'm really grateful that they took the time to share their stories with us.
Donny?
Yeah, thanks for that question, by the way. And Aly, greetings from Dear, who you graced season 1 so beautifully.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me on that, by the way. That was very special.
Oh, fantastic. I love the question. Look, I'm a psychologist by training, and so I've been doing TV for a really long time. So it's for me, it's more about not what I learned so much as what I was reminded of. The biggest takeaway from my training as a shrink is how alike we are, and how easy it is to forget that when you see people who are in exalted positions or have jobs that we're never going to aspire to. But the leveling that I think Dear does is just a reminder for me of how ultimately alike we are. And the more specific you are with those stories, the more universal emotionally, you're able to reach. And so you have a surfer over here, you have an amazing actor in Viola Davis, you have a multi-hyphenate with Billy Porter, et cetera. And then you have, Malala Yousafzai, a Nobel Prize, Peace Prize winner. But what we learn from that diversity is the commonalities of our experience emotionally. And for me, that's a lesson I don't want to forget. And so Dear was just a beautiful reminder of that.
What about you, Jenner?
I think that obviously you're making a movie or a television show, and it's easy to forget that the telling of a story can be therapeutic, whether you're a therapist or not. And the essence of trauma is not being seen and heard, right? That's the essence of trauma. So to do a film is, in a sense, unwinding a lot of experiences for people, just to be there with the lights on them, with the camera rolling, with you asking detailed questions, caring about what they have to say. And, you know, it's just so powerful. We were on the set of our new Amazon series that we're doing about the intersection of reality TV, Christian fundamentalism, and patriarchy. And a lot of the work that you've done, Aly, dovetails into the work we were doing. And we were sitting with someone and they were so nervous sitting down. And Julia said, you know, would you like to sit where I'm sitting for a little bit?
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, the woman got up and sat in the director's chair and we just kept talking. And,
That's dope.
you know, that's kind of what we get to do. And I couldn't think of anything more powerful than to be able to do that for a living, to be able to do that as our vocation. It's honestly a master's class in 1,000 different subjects, but it's also a lesson in humanity 24 hours a day.
And what about you, Julia?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, listening is a huge gift, and it's a huge, this career of being a documentarian is, I'm so grateful to continue to practice that gift that I have, and that I can hone and refine and question in myself, if I'm a good listener or not, and what really the definition of being a good listener is in practice. I would say also really what has helped, what I've learned from being a documentarian is just to see the nuance in everything, and to, a lot of the subjects we've covered are super polarizing and very third rail in black and white terms of understanding two sides of a story. And for me to really understand where I might be prejudiced that I might not be aware of myself, and to give into that and just be really humble about that.
Well, Aly, John, Janet, Julia, Jenner, and Donny, thank you so much for joining us on this panel. We wish you all the best over this season. And don't forget to go to goldderby.com and make your predictions for this year's Emmys. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.